So Femi is somebody who I have not much time for, to be fair. One of the quintessential liberal Twitterati and on TikTok as well, who just continues to think that the entirety of the kind of political sphere is entirely defined by the twos and fros of Brexit. Like he's got good political views and a bunch of other stuff, but we just have this. He's very pro Keith, right? Very pro Keith Stronger Casey, Sir Keith Stronger Casey, and is just relentless in his pursuit of overturning Brexit. Which, whilst
Yeah.
I dislike Brexit, I'm also incredibly pro-democracy. And he loses so much kind of political capital by enraging a bunch of people by being anti-democracy in this way. But anyway, he's being sued by Eddie Dempsey. We'll probably go over why in the video. We'll also probably go over, in general, why there is some people have some problems with Eddie Dempsey and why I have some problems with Eddie Dempsey. It's the whole stuff. Anyway, let's watch the video.
So I'm being sued again. Remember last time? Richard Tice, Nigel Farage's friend, tried to sue me for saying that Leave.eu tweeting a picture of a Jewish person puppeteering politicians, a well-known anti-Semitic trope, meant that he set up an anti-Jewish organization. I simply didn't have the money to hire lawyers to try and fight him in court, so I made a video, much like this one, backing up what I said and calling him out for trying to use his expensive lawyers to intimidate and silence me. And Richard Tice backed down, either because he realized he couldn't win the case or because he knew how bad it made him look. Similarly, right now I've got about
I mean, I do need to do more stuff on how essentially the ways in which defamation law, it's like civil matters, get used by rich people to like literally silence anybody who disagrees with them. Like
Yeah.
remember, like when Rachel Riley shut down sued that Corbyn staffer, and then won inexplicably. Or like Friendly Geordies getting sued by John Barilaro, or J.K.
Yeah.
Rowling literally threatening lawyers against anybody
Well,
who says she's transphobic on Twitter.
Well, I remember if you do the early 2000s, the McLibel case as well was a
Which one
thing
was
with
that?
there was a couple who were involved in like a anti-GMO thing or something, who would not anti-GMO, so an anti fast food
Hmm.
campaign thing, who were making certain claims about McDonald's, which were absolutely true, but you need to sort of prove that in court. And McDonald's tried to sue them. They went through the courts for years and years. It became big enough that they got like pro bono, for free, legal help and all the rest of it, and it was fun. They eventually ended up winning, but McDonald's dragged them through the courts for fucking years and years. It's an amazing case.
Was that the one? Was that the case that got them to stop using beef tallow to fry the chips?
I think so, yes, if I recall
Yeah, because
correctly.
there was this whole fucking deal with McDonald's chips changing or something like that.
Some
Um,
shit like that, yeah.
yeah, I can't remember exactly what, but yeah, like absolutely. If do matter like if you're rich, you just get to silence any kind of political dissent against you. Like Helen Joyce was threatening it as well. And obviously, Maya Forstater. It's always fucking turfs. It's always strange, really, how they try and say that transgender people are like the middle class movement. Yet it's always the turfs who always have huge amounts of money to hire expensive lawyers to sue anybody who says they're transphobic for defamation. Funny one, that one.
True.
£2,500 to my name, so hiring lawyers to match those of the person trying to sue me now would wipe me out financially anyway. So
fine, I'll do it myself.
Unfortunately, the person threatening to sue me right now is Eddie Dempsey, so I want to get a couple of things straight. I offered to sit down with him and explain
hang on.
why
We've got a tie-in between McLibel and Keith. Apparently, he
Oh,
was apparently he was one of the people who gave free advice, free legal advice to Franny Armstrong and Ken Loach, who were no, sorry, but who were the two that did it? Anyway, the couple who were in court. Apparently, Keith, as a younger man back in the late 90s, was giving free advice to that couple when he was back when he was actually a human rights lawyer and stuff.
yeah, quite, yeah,
Well, there
100%.
you
I mean,
go.
yeah, I mean,
But
back when
based Keith before
Based
he was
based
Sir
Keith indeed.
Keith.
Yeah, quite. Indeed, the same man who said that we should abolish the monarchy, who's now writing "God Save the King" tweets.
Oh God, we're gonna have to vote for these cunts. It's
I'm going
gonna
to have
kill
to.
me.
I'm in a blue-red constituency. Like I have no one else to vote
Yeah,
for.
same. So I'm gonna have to, and it's gonna kill me to do it.
Yeah. I mean, my local MP is, or the person who probably would stand at the time, probably Greg Marshall, and he's a big Corbyn stan, so you know, I feel happy voting for him as
Ah,
my local
well,
MP.
mine isn't, but never mind.
There you go.
person from an ethnic minority found his comments specifically about ethnic minorities to be problematic in a way that supported the narrative of racists, and even put out a video together explaining what he meant, why the language he used was problematic, and give him a chance to tell the world that it was just a mistake. But Eddie Dempsey's lawyers have refused and have continued.
But for anybody who needs any context, right, I think Femi might show a clip later on, but I just want to make sure that if in case he doesn't, there is some context towards this, in that there's a clip that resurfaced from 2016, I think it was. Yeah, it was from
Yep.
2016, because it was about Brexit, where Eddie Dempsey essentially, he makes a couple of good points and a couple of bad points, right? Now, the good points that he makes is that the people who support Tommy Robinson, right, that they have a hatred of the liberal left because they've been left behind electorally, essentially by the Labour Party. Because what the point that he made was that the Labour Party have done electoral calculus where they know that they can rely on the ethnic minority vote because the Conservative Party is so fucking racist that they literally have
Yeah.
nobody else to vote for. So they can rely on that without having to bother trying to appeal to them. But they
Yeah.
also realise that in a post-Thatcher world, so I need this again. It's even more explaining, but I apologize to take up loads of your screen time with this, Kev. But in the 80s, when loads of public sector things got sold off, that all went to an incredibly large generation of people who were just coming through, early age. Early kind of adult age at that point in the late 20s, early 30s, and they all had a huge benefit from public sector things being sold off, people being sold their council house on the cheap, the incredibly lucrative defined benefit pensions being the standard at the time, and the demutualisation of the building societies, all that stuff. They had a huge windfall of money. There's loads of things that were mutual institutions got sold off and got turned into financial institutions, and they got a big windfall because of that, which means we had a really big burgeoning middle class at the end of the 80s all the way through the 90s and during the 2000s and during the Blair years as well. So what Blair had to do to be able to try and win an election, and was kind of forced to do so, even though I think it's bad for him to do it, was to abandon class politics, abandon the working class voters who Eddie Dempsey is speaking about here, like who would otherwise have voted Labour, to be able to try and court the liberal, kind of metropolitan liberal elite people who were the beneficiaries of the public sector sell-off in the 80s and early 90s at the time.
Yeah.
Because this was the biggest electoral bloc in the country, because these are the baby boomers, right? These were the people who were, the largest voting demographic in the country. So you couldn't win an election without them. So by positioning Labour to try and get these people over at the time, he abandoned class politics, abandoned the working class. What Eddie Dempsey does, though, in this video is try and draw some kind of delineation between who are, quote unquote, the working class and the ethnic minorities, when any good leftist would know this is the same fucking thing, right? In fact, a much larger portion of ethnic minorities in this country are members of the working class as a proportion than actual white people are. The vast majority of them, the middle class liberal people who Blair was trying to appeal to with the creation of New Labour, was white middle class people. And
Indeed,
that's
yeah.
what,
Well, we
that's
did
where
on.
Eddie, go for it.
I was just gonna say on the stream, we went over the full thing, not just the clip that resurfaced. We went and found the actual speech and listened to the whole thing, and there was some sussy, like you say. I think that your analysis is correct. I think he had a kernel of a point, a really interesting point about the abandonment of class politics, which is undoubtedly, I mean, no sensible human being would, I think, deny that the Labour Party has moved away from that.
Yeah.
And it was unfortunately one of the things that the kind of New Labour people did was lie about this being like, oh, it's just a temporary thing until we can, sort out this and the other. No, they've got a thing where they're like almost, it's like a disease. They're allergic to it, which is why when Corbyn tried to reintroduce some of that, they reacted so strongly to it.
Like Ian Austin, right? All that.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. I think
Exactly.
the really big problem that Eddie Dempsey did was he essentially tried to justify Tommy Robinson, or
Exactly,
inadvertently justify Tommy Robinson. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, because I don't think for a second he supports any fucking nonsense like that. Any of the fucking shit libs who are out there calling him a fascist are just fucking ridiculous. He was clearly not trying to do that, but it was inelegantly worded at best. Where he, like you say, I think in use of language in a simplified way, he does end up delineating between what he considers, when he says working class, you get the impression he just means white people.
Exactly, white working class specifically, right?
Yeah, that's a bit sussy. That's not a
100%.
great
Yeah,
a
like
great approach to it.
it was incredibly dodgy. You're absolutely right,
Yeah,
because the core part of the message I genuinely agree with, and that if you abandon class politics like Blair did, what you will do is push people towards fascism, and that's what
yeah.
happened, and that's exactly what
That is
happened.
well, exactly. Yeah, I don't think it's any. It shouldn't be that surprising, although it is disgusting, of course, that the fucking British National Party got 2 MEPs elected during that exact period,
Yeah,
during the Blair
100%.
years. Yeah,
100%. And obviously, Labour are to blame for doing that by you abandoning class politics altogether. Because
yeah,
by you integrating class politics, you would have got a bunch of the ethnic minority people on board anyway, because they're mostly working class. They would have got on board with it. But by essentially having to rely on ethnic minorities only because they literally have no one else to vote for, like that is that's racially insensitive already anyway, right? If you're
yeah,
literally taking an entire swathe of people for granted, literally just because everyone else, the other party are so racist that they literally can't vote for anybody else, that's not good.
yeah.
That's not a good situation to be in. And
No.
you can bridge that through class politics, which affects
It's,
people of all races, because you need an intersectional approach to everything. And if Eddie Dempsey was making that point, it would have been a really good speech. But what he actually did was say working class people, what was inadvertently, whether or not IP believes this or not, I don't think he does, say that working class people innately means white people, and that Tommy Robinson, there is something salient that he's saying, neither of which are true, and neither of which I actually genuinely think that he thinks.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the problem with the kind of Blairite abandonment of working class struggle, if you will, not that the Labour Party was necessarily always that way. You've got to bear in mind they've only ever been properly left wing twice in their history. Really, that
Hmm.
would be well 3 times at the start, and then under Attlee to an extent, and then during the 80s
Hmm.
under Foot.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, the abandonment of that is it fucks over the working class twice over because you ignore working class people as even a fucking voting bloc, and secondly, in order to try and get that middle class vote that you talked about, you have to do neoliberal economics, which fucks over the working class. So
Well,
you
yeah.
abandon them in terms of actually talking to them or pretending to give a shit about them, and you pull the economic rug out from underneath them.
Well, exactly. It's literally is entirely Tony Blair's fault that we have a generation of communists. He sent us all to university, right, to make us all educated, because they wanted to, use they basically they wanted to use, by pushing young people into education, they wanted to create a generation of Labour voters, and they did that by liberalising the education system so that they would then reduce their the application requirements to get into university and be more lenient with it, because you're now a consumer rather than a student, right? They lowered all the entry requirements to try and bring more people in, because now it's being financialized. You need to be able to generate as many consumers as possible. And Blair thought, well, this is a good idea to be able to get more people who are going to theoretically be future Labour voters. And then they also, destroyed the economy for us by making us perpetual renters, perpetual gig economy workers, right? And this is all Blair policy making that's caused this, which was then obviously doubled down on by Cameron. Was the worst possible thing that happened afterwards, because the austerity policies after that destroyed the social safety net essentially just turned us all into serfs at that point. The younger
Yeah.
generations who didn't, luck into rich families who put them straight onto the property ladder, or put them straight into daddy's high paying job in whatever fucking firm that they're a part of or they're a high up of, right?
Yeah.
So, and then we're all educated now. We all know that neoliberal economics doesn't work because we've all fucking studied that shit. Or we've at least been, educated enough to be able to critically analyse it. And now we're all fucking socialists. And Tony Blair only has
Sure.
himself to blame.
Well, you say that, maybe it's the greatest game of 4D chess that's ever happened.
I
Tony
would.
Blair knew he couldn't be the political radical, but what he could do was make the situation so shit that it would create a generation of more extreme political voters and actors and all the rest of it, and therefore create a socialist utopia in the future. The man was a genius.
I really wish that was the case. That would have
He
been
was. He's
amazing.
the king of the neoliberal accelerationists.
Accelerationist Blair, which would be a very amusing thought if he didn't have his own fucking institute saying how he hoped that Jeremy Corbyn lost to fucking Boris Johnson.
Oh no! In actuality, he's a massive cunt. I was just memeing. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, I understand. But yeah. There we go. Anyway, we're only 1 minute in and we've been talking for. Let's go.
Fuck's
To threaten me
sake!
with legal action that I cannot afford. However, he is the last person that I want a public fight with right now because he's doing amazing work for the Enough is Enough campaign. So I have a really weird request. Because I don't intend to hire lawyers, can I please ask that if you would have been willing to donate to any potential crowdfunder that I set up for my legal defense, can you instead donate the money to either His Enough Is Enough campaign, the RMT, or any workers union that you feel needs help right now given the current crisis? So here's what I
Yeah, because like even being a shitlib, right? Because he is a shitlib, he does at least have his head screwed on with stuff like unions and campaigns for things that make life better for working class people, right? Like he's not completely extricated from class politics, Femi. He probably is very working class himself. To be fair, like I understand that you can't make much money being a 4K subscriber YouTuber. Although to be fair, he is on the right stuff a lot of the time, so I'm not sure where he makes his money, but.
Sure.
Tweeted. Eddie Dempsey, speaking at Labour Leave, saying Tommy Robinson is right to hate Labour's focus on racial equality. These people held Labour back from firmly opposing Brexit until it was too late. And I tweeted it with this video.
And I think that Femi is incorrect in his assessment there, like saying that these not did he ever did. I mean, you've watched the whole speech actually. Do you think that it's correct for Femi to assert that Eddie was saying that Tommy Robinson was right to hate their obsession with racial inclusivity, or is it what when I was talking before about his hatred of their abandonment of class politics?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very unfair characterization. Yeah, I don't think he was saying that for a second. Like I say, it was inelegantly worded, and I think in the light of day, I think he would probably argue the case a little more delicately than he did on the day itself. But I don't think he was remotely suggesting that Tommy Robinson was like correct in his racist nonsense. I think he was saying that was a symptom of much bigger forces, which is undoubtedly fucking true.
Yeah, again, you abandon class politics, you'll turn people to fascism. Like
Yeah,
socialism or barbarism. There you go.
Yeah.
And I tell you, the problem we've got in the left is, as the institutions of the working class and their jobs have been removed from around this country, some of their institutions been taken over by the Liberals.
Now, for starters, the use of the word liberal has always been a problem because what I hope he means is neoliberal, which is the word he uses at the end, which basically means free market capitalism. And obviously, trade unionists like him should
I really hate this kind where it is a problem both within the Liberals and on the left, where people kind of misunderstand neoliberalism as an ideology, when it's free market capitalism can be specific to any amount of liberal ideology, and that's why we use the term liberal. Whereas neoliberal explicitly refers to a system of government and markets in which the state does not exist to help people through welfare and by owning its own institutions. Its singular function should be to maintain the competitiveness of the markets, right? That's real neoliberalism, which is why they're happy to sell things off as long as there's a fucking monopoly.
Well, exactly.
Antitrust law.
At best, the neoliberal at best sees at most a government is essentially a sort of a welfare state for the rich via government contract for things that the free market can't necessarily legally do, like have an army or something like that. You can still
100%,
privatize all of that shit and give money to rich people. That's
100%.
basically the most that you can do. The government is a commissioning agent giving massive grants of public money to rich bastards.
Yeah, for sure. And I think actually us on the left misusing this term has probably led Femi to say what he says here, which is trying to distinguish between saying, well, that liberal just means generally left wing, and neoliberal means the thing that everybody hates about liberal capitalism. When it's like no. There's the distinction is also the economic distinction there is also meaningful. But anyway, let's continue.
Be opposed to that. But the top definition of the word liberal means socially progressive. And 99% of the people watching this video, that's what they understand.
Literally, the second definition that he has on his screen says free enterprise in big letters that he's even showing on the screen. Like, you're debunking himself with his own argument here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's almost as if there are several ways in which a word can be interpreted, Fem.
Yeah, exactly.
Stand by that word. Hell, even Hinge sees it that way. Your options are liberal, left-wing, moderate, centre, conservative, right-wing. Hell, even Owen Jones, someone very much alike.
Yeah, it's almost like it's not about whether or not Eddie Dempsey is correct in his use of political terminology. It's more about the fact that our entire society is brain poisoned to not accept the left as legitimate political actors.
True. Also, I don't know that Hinge dating app has the most sophisticated view of different political perspectives.
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
like.
This the political spectrum as stated by Hinge, right?
Yeah,
Like, but even
exactly.
then, like, I don't think I
Well,
even
I'm an
even but even
anarcho-hingist, so
like a
that's
Hinges, but I don't think Hinge is that far off the mark with how people in this country view politics, right? Especially in a post-Blair age where
yeah.
there was no left. The left was literally just fucking people from the SWP handing out flyers on Market Street in Manchester. There was no
Well,
good,
ironically,
yeah,
Blair brought it back with the anti-war movement, basically by invading Iran.
yeah, quite. And the distinction between being a leftist and being a liberal is only something that's really kind of come back into fashion in recent years. So as far as people are concerned, I mean, we're seeing again, and we've talked about this before as well, how this explicit desire to demonize Jeremy Corbyn as a person and then also link any left wing politics to him is also another way in which people are trying to delegitimize the left as legitimate political actors.
Yeah, correct.
Aligned with Ed Dempsey right now, at the time said that this term described anybody who was left-wing and anti-Brexit. But you're thinking, so what, he used the wrong word? But here's what he said about it.
Whatever you think about people that turn out for Tommy Robinson demos or any other march like that, the one thing that unites them people, beyond whatever other bigotry that's going on, is their hatred of the liberal left. And they are right to hate them. They are correct.
So it's undeniable that he said that the people who show up to Tommy Robinson rallies and rallies like that, which obviously includes Tommy Robinson, are right to hate liberals. So can you see why
But he's not saying that because of the racial inclusivity things he was saying previously. I don't think
Yeah.
that. I mean, maybe that's how it came across, but I don't think that's exactly what he means.
Well, I
Um,
mean, he literally says, regardless of the other bigotry that's going on. So he's literally
mhm.
saying, if we put that to one side for a second, just the hatred of the liberals is fine. Which
Well, yeah, but like, thing is, I also believe that I don't think that the people turning up to Tommy Robinson marches necessarily hate liberals in the way that he thinks that, in the way that Eddie Dempsey would think is the right way to hate them. I think
yeah,
that they hate liberals because they see them as being part of some kind of a political group that dislikes them for for being people who believe in things like Brexit or whatever.
yeah,
Whereas they actually they just hate them just because it's this kind of pathological trigger the libs mindset that a lot
yeah.
of the Tommy Robinson people have. There's no political, firm political ideology
It's
underpinning it. It's
yeah.
just trigger the libs.jpg.
It's sort of lizard brain reacting to the situation rather than necessarily some sort of deep philosophical
Yeah, well,
analysis.
it's reactionary. It's absolutely, it
Yeah.
just is a reactionary mindset. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
using a word that most people understand as meaning socially progressive to describe the people that you say Tommy Robinson is right to hate can be a problem. But let's just say these are red flags. What does he then say?
Because they are the people who have seen their industries taken away, who have captured their Labour Party, and are now talking to them like they're the scum of the earth.
Okay, so Tommy Robinson
I
support.
mean, just 100% correct. Eddie,
Yeah.
100% on the money with that particular statement.
Yeah,
Capturing
exactly.
industry.
Also,
Okay.
he widens it out there because he doesn't just say Tommy Robinson supporters are that way. He said the people who've taken away the industry, blah blah blah. So it's the wider working class are being talked to like they're scum by the Labour Party, which for the most part has been true in other
It's
than
true.
the Jeremy Corbyn years.
Yeah, 100%. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And the fact them taking over the Labour Party or their is the most poignant thing there, right? In that this kind of the rise in the 2000s of the political careerist that we never really
Yeah,
used to have in this country in the same way. There's a good Peter Oborn bit about it as well, worth watching. They don't get into politics to help people or to make a better world. They get into it for a career. And the problem is that when the second biggest party in this country is the Workers' Party, right, or quote unquote at this point, Workers' Party, then they have no option, regardless of their political ideology or their actual adherence to Labour principles. If they want to make it into a career, they have no choice but to try and worm their way up through the ranks of the Labour Party to try and get into that position in the first place. And so, and he's right, they have taken over and infiltrated the party. People always talk about, oh, we've got all the leftist entryism into the Labour Party. Why do you think it's so liberal in 2022? Why do you think it's because of liberal entryism into a socialist workers' party?
yep.
Simple.
supporters are right to hate liberals because they're talking to them like scum. That's an interesting side to pick, given that nobody is calling Tommy Robinson supporters scum because they lost their industries or their jobs. They're calling them scum because they support this guy.
You think this is a British community, or you might have British Muslims. They are enemy combatants in these houses who want to kill you, maim you, and destroy you.
No, Mo. It's because the people from your
But also, it doesn't really matter whether or not they're justified in calling them scum, because I think that obviously they are justified in calling anybody who supports Tommy Robinson scum, right? They're absolutely justified in doing so, but that doesn't stop them. That doesn't help whether or not they become further reactionary minded or they retreat away from class politics even further.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and not just that, but these people do vote, and I think it's worth taking into account that maybe referring to people in that way probably isn't enormously helpful from the party that's literally supposed to represent that class.
Yeah, and it goes back to, and it just again goes back to so there's another point I was going to make, but I completely forgot what it was. Oh yeah, it's where people, the kind of liberal mindset where you can't do things because there's utility in doing so. Everything has to follow the protocol. In the same way that when Jeremy Corbyn talked about his friends at Hezbollah, or the friends of Hezbollah, during peace talks, I'm like, yeah, what, you think you can get a peace agreement with terrorists by calling them those bellends over there? Our friends in Israel and the bellends over at Hezbollah. Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of peace agreement become between those two people by speaking in that manner, right? There is political utility in not insulting the people you're trying to get a peace agreement with.
home country, Somalia, are backward barbarians.
You're part of an invasion into our country, Sadiq.
But it's the next bit you really need to listen to.
There's too many in the Labour Party right now. They've made a calculation that there's a certain section of the top end of the working class in alliance with people they calculate from ethnic minorities and the Liberals. That's enough to get them into power. And they believe that
again, that's the
alliance is all they need,
delineation
that they
there.
can disregard.
Right there, the
100%.
linguistic delineation, the working class minorities, they're two separate groups in this discussion. And that's grim.
That is the bit which everyone should be frustrated by, and at least obviously Femi is noticing that that's the specific delineation that's being made, and that's the main. I guess he's prefaced this by saying this is the main criticism that he does have, and it's the criticism that you and I both share as well.
Yeah.
All of the working class people in this country that have been driven away from the Labour movement by the neoliberals.
So he's making the argument that Labour is neglecting the poorer end of working class people because it only needs the votes of liberals, upper working class, and ethnic minorities. Especially with the use of the word alliance, what he says suggests that the political interests of ethnic minorities on one hand, and by process of elimination, white working class on the other, are in opposition to each other, which is straight out of the UKIP handbook. And also neglect.
Yeah, I think Femi's
I think it's cheap to be like, that's in the UKIP handbook, because you're essentially saying he's like UKIP, which you know isn't true.
Yeah,
I think that's,
for sure.
that's unfair. No, don't get me wrong. I don't think that he as a black guy has to listen to this shit and give it like a generous viewing or anything like that. I can understand Eddie Dempsey being pretty fucking unpleased with the situation, yeah.
I think by saying it's part of the UKIP handbook, I don't think Femi's saying that he is like UKIP there though. I think he's saying that the rhetoric is so similar that it would be understandable why people of colour are being pissed off with this shit. Because there are loads of people like within the union movement, who genuinely have these criticisms of Eddie Dempsey, and I agree with them. And I think that maybe he's trying to be diplomatic, right? Maybe if he's speaking of a room full of Brexit supporters, he feels like he needs to sugarcoat things, that he can't just go out there and think that what he should be saying, right? What we both agree he should be saying is that if you don't have class politics in your intersectional analysis, you will make people turn to fascism, because that's what's happened. By calling people like Tommy Robinson supporters fascists, he thinks that he might not get across to them the point that he wants to make. But with the way he has made his point, he's clearly turning away, people from ethnic minorities, right? Which is, as far as I'm concerned, the group of people you should probably be looking out more for, and not theoretical Tommy Robinson supporters.
Yeah, true.
Neglects the fact that people from ethnic minorities are statistically more likely to be working class. B. It treats being an anti-racist party as an optional extra because you specifically target the votes of ethnic minorities by being anti-racist, by promoting racial equality. So the question is, why ethnic minorities? Because he could have said the same thing about being anti-homophobia. Oh, Labour thinks it just needs the votes of gay people, so it doesn't need working class people. Or gender equality. Oh, Labour thinks it just needs the women vote, so to hell with poor people. Again, acting like intersectionality isn't a thing. But he chose to complain about Labour focusing on the group that Tommy Robinson's lot hate the most, ethnic minorities, to the detriment of poorer working class white people. Now again, I want this to be a teachable moment, so I'm going to show you some examples of me making similar points to Ed Dempsey long before I saw his video, and see if you can spot the difference.
What's your take on that kind of point that he's made there? That the fact that he's explicitly kind of singled out the hatred of ethnic minorities against other groups of people who would also naturally have to vote for the Labour Party because of the bigotry being espoused by the Conservative Party at national elections.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that I think it there's oh god, it's so annoying because I've already been he's I think Femi's onto something definitely in the sense that he's oh, I've lost my fucking train now. Sorry, we had a thing. Also, Mixed Vivian Wolves now popped into the chat with a video.
Oh yeah, I saw that one.
I need to when I'm having these proper discussions, I need to turn the not the TTS off necessarily, but like the fucking. I've lost the train. Sorry, go on.
It's fine. It's no problems at all. But yeah, like I think if you were gonna give Eddie Dempsey leeway here, you'd say that, well, hang on a minute, this is a discussion about Brexit, right? This was a Labour Leave thing that he was talking about in 2016. If there's any specific group that would be in context for people who might theoretically be on the side of Brexit who you disagree with because huge amounts of what underpinned a lot of the Brexit vote was people wanting to make sure that the country maintained some amount of ethnic homogeneity, right?
Yeah.
So in that context, if you're trying to move people over away from that position towards class politics, right?
Yeah.
Then you'd want to make that specific point about people like ethnic minorities being part of the Labour vote that Labour take for granted.
Yeah.
That's the only scenario where I think that if you were being charitable to Eddie Dempsey, where you get away with that.
True. Firstly, fuck you, Mixed Vivian Wolf, dickhead, absolute dickhead. Secondly, 255. I'm not suggesting that individual people don't call racists scum. If you're a working class racist or any kind of racist, you can be called scum. I'm saying from the perspective of the Labour Party, you have to essentially kind of meet the working class where they're at and work on behalf of alleviating that shit to hopefully win them round a little bit. Now, there are some people for whom that won't work, but to just abandon them on the basis that they have some views that you don't like, I think is to somewhat miss the point.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. If you're looking at it from, again, the big kind of linchpin of this whole speech that we're talking about here is about electoral calculus at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying they should pander to any fucking racists.
No.
But the point is, a lot of these people not necessarily became racist because that's a slightly different issue, but went down the kind of far right rabbit hole because they were abandoned by the Labour Party in the first place.
It's
So
100%. Yeah,
by
like
unabandoning them, maybe you could at least stop the next generation from falling down the same pipeline.
Yeah, once you give them the choice of what do you care more about, hating ethnic minorities or your own economic material interests, you can then bring them round. And once you've brought them to that perspective, suddenly they'll then be more in contact with people who are anti-racist and absorb that by osmosis. That's the kind of where I would kind of go with that. Yeah.
Failure to really focus on regional inequality just to the same extent as we focus on the other protected characteristics in terms of inequality, that damages trust in those areas that are desperately being left behind. You see how I pointed out that the left addresses a whole range of inequalities which exist in all regions of the UK, but has failed to be as strong on regional inequality specifically. So it's more about regional poverty being left out rather than pitting one group of people, say ethnic minorities, against another. And most importantly, I didn't have to agree with extreme racists in order to do that. In fact, when I was
and also, it's also very true that the position that explicitly tries to separate white working class people from ethnic minorities is the right wing press, right?
Yeah.
We've seen, we know, we understand. We've seen the graphs that show that people's understanding of immigration as being a problem is directly proportional to the amount at which the newspapers talk about immigration being a problem. You can literally, the graph, I'm not going to hand, but you can literally see it spikes and troughs and whatever, and they follow literally to the letter, right? Identically. It's crazy shit. The way in which people's consent can be manufactured in that way.
Oh, absolutely.
Filming at a pro-Brexit rally and made a clear distinction between the working class people who wanted Brexit and the Tommy Robinson supporters who were also there.
And it's actually insulting to many of them to compare them with the Tommy Robinson lot because what they wanted was a political system that actually cared about them, that cared about areas outside of London, places that have been neglected by the political class for a very long time. Nothing to do with racism, nothing to do with Tommy Robinson or UKIP or any of that crap.
I put myself in physical...
Also, I just kind of disagree with this idea that like regional inequality is the big issue. No, it's explicit, the financialization of the whole economic system, right? The whole ways in which the neoliberal belief in competitive markets has infected every sector of society and affected people's psyche, right? I think I've mentioned this on stream before as well. That I think that the biggest Marx was right moment, as far as I'm concerned, is the kind of base superstructure dynamic where the economic system affects the culture that you live in. And what else has had the same effect on an entire society as the belief in competitive markets under neoliberalism, and the way that now everything is a competition, everything is marketing yourself. Fucking dating apps are marketing yourself. It's miserable.
Well, no, I think the worst of it, from a societal point of view, is the idea of school league tables. Literally making schools compete against one another.
Yeah.
What the
making
fuck is
kids
wrong?
And making kids compete against each other at school, right?
Yeah, it's fucking it's brain poison.
It is brain poison.
And it teaches kids, and indeed parents of kids, that kind of ultra competitive dog eat dog world is A, better, and B, the way it should be done, or the way it has to be done. And that's just like I say, it's fucking cultural suicide.
Well, it's societally toxic, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's that quote I said before, in which the man without a bandit mindset cannot succeed under capitalism, and the man with the bandit mindset cannot conceive of a functional social order.
Sure.
I don't know where that quote's from. Someone tweeted it at me.
Physical danger on multiple occasions to highlight the dangers of aligning the working class struggle with a Brexit that was introduced, promoted, and driven through by the far right. And that's a link that I've been trying to break ever since I saw Labour's pro-Brexit MP Kate Hoey on a boat with Nigel Farage. Because Brexit has
it's Alan Partridge. It's the Alan Partridge episode where he's doing the boat and he gets the cow chucked on him. 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
objectively hurt working class people. The government's own experts say that Brexit has done more damage to our economy than COVID. Half of small businesses have had to stop selling to the EU.
That's the problem. You suddenly start talking about small businesses now. Like, obviously, of all the people in capitalism, like, of all the members of the bourgeois, small business owners are pretty low on my totem pole of people I have a problem with, right? But rather than talking about issues to do with actual workers' rights, right? The ways in which the economic system the social democratic consensus has been rolled back is far more important than the overall macroeconomic effects of Brexit, as far as, again, a lot of these people are concerned. And that's where he's losing them. That's why the Labour parties, and that's why the liberal left in general have lost these people decades ago at this point, right?
Yeah.
Because things were collapsing, as Eddie was talking about, the industries have collapsed and they've been taken over and turned into fucking gig economy bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And the class politics has been left by the wayside.
Well, exactly, yeah, but this is the thing, because ultimately he is a shit lib, Femi doesn't see it that way. Femi, he can only conceptualise it through, I don't know, the same, he's got the same brain poison that leads to the initial problem, so he's trying to analyse the problem of which he is part, and can't see the wood for the trees. It's just he can't see that he's ensconced in the same liberal mind prison.
100%.
Academics say that it's added 6% to the cost of food. Brexit has hurt the very people that Eddie Dempsey wants to help. but he was supporting it. The speech we're talking about, he gave it at a pro-Brexit rally. People like him are the reason that Labour kept supporting Brexit for 3 years until late 2019, at which point it was too late.
No, they supported Brexit because that was the result of the fucking referendum,
Yeah.
Femi.
Exactly. They supported let's do the thing that we had a referendum about.
Yeah,
Like,
let's follow the democratic will of the people, quote unquote. Like,
Yeah,
literally, and Jeremy Corbyn went against Brexit for all of went against Brexit during the campaigning during 2016, despite being a Brexiteer himself. Right, the idea that
Yeah.
Labour specifically adopted this position because of people like Eddie Dempsey, and not because that was what was voted for against the wishes of both the membership and the campaigning that the Labour leader did in spite of his own ideology. This is nonsensical from Femi here.
Well, exactly, and not just that, but like I think there are perfectly reasonable leftist arguments to be made in favour of Brexit, and I think people like Eddie Dempsey made those during the referendum discussion, the national discussion. But to claim in any way that the left were a significant part of why Brexit happened is just not fucking true.
No, it's actually 100% not true. 100% not
Yeah.
true. And again, and it was the capitulation towards the people who wanted to overturn Brexit that cost Labour the election in 2019.
Oh, absolutely,
Literally.
yeah, absolutely, no, undoubtedly, yeah.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Obviously, the consent had been manufactured further then, and obviously all of the fucking terrorist sympathiser smears had begun around then. But even so, the clear delineation between the two camps in the election, in the Brexit election, was let's get Brexit done versus confirmatory vote. And again, like, you can't just run against something like that.
Sure.
Late for Labour to lead the charge against it. And it just so happens that 2 weeks before the Dempsey video resurfaced, I put out a video about how Katie Hopkins was rebranding herself on TikTok as some sort of working class savior during the poverty crisis, because I am genuinely...
I mean, she really did. She just said that don't pay was a good idea, and I'm like, sure, right? Is she engaging in any meaningful class politics? No. But again, I guess that maybe that was Femi's point as well. I didn't see his TikTok response. I went over on stream. It was very weird. Oh no! I tell you what. Because what actually happened at the end of her big video about Don't Pay UK? Can you guess? I will give you one singular guess of what global institution she blamed for the cost of living crisis.
Oof. Jews.
I mean, close, but the World Economic Forum, which at this point basically has become synonymous with Jewish people at this point, to be honest. But it was all one thing. It's like, yeah, the issue isn't neoliberalism. The issue isn't any of that shit. The issue isn't the continued financialization of the economy. The issue is the spooky World Economic Forum, the people killing capitalism from the inside.
Well, exactly,
Anyway,
yeah, just
I
ridiculous.
digress.
scared that if we let the people who supported Brexit by either being racist or defending the views of racists lead working class movements again, we will only have ourselves to blame when the next Brexit happens. Now, I am not saying that Eddie Dempsey is racist. The man has campaigned hard against racism. He has receipts on that. You even heard him talk about Tommy Robinson's bigotry in that speech. But people make mistakes. I've even known black people who are also anti-racist who, because of either internalized racism or unknowingly swallowing racist narratives from the media, have said stuff about black people that is more racist than what Dempsey said. So the fact that Dempsey has a history of standing up against racism doesn't make what he said in that speech any less problematic. Whatever his beliefs, the man messed up. And so again, we come back to, I'm getting sued. So I guess we probably should address that. There are 3 defenses against libel.
I think Femi just said a lot of what we said, and that we both agree that we know that Eddie Dempsey is an anti-racist campaigner. It's just the way in which he worded that was bad, and it came across poorly. And he said it probably was just a mistake. Like, that's Femi's position that he's holding here.
Yeah. The next
Although
Brexit, are we going to leave the EU more? Yeah, probably. Well, I think we're going to have to rejoin the EU because that queue outside Parliament is going to get so long it's going to reach France, and we're going to need the freedom of movement again. Undoubtedly.
Have you got your Q visa?
Exactly.
We'll probably just have to rejoin the EU to stop war in Ireland, but a story for another time. But I think the weird part is how under all of this kind of discussion about Eddie Dempsey, because you know how fucking people like Supertansky, all of the liberal Starmerites kicked off about Eddie Dempsey because of this clip, right? And Femi is probably the person actually here who's probably made the most cogent argument against him so far from all of the stuff that I've seen. How people just
Yeah.
tend to forget the fact that this guy went to the LPR to fight with Alexei Mozgovoi, the guy who did show trials where people were executed, and these were people who were like Russian insurgents in the Donbass that he was allying himself with.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know what he said about Dempsey outside of this video that's getting him sued, but if he was just making these points, that seems a bit odd that you would sue him.
Yeah, but
So,
like,
so
yeah,
what do we know what he actually said that he's getting sued for? Because so far
and I
this
guess
doesn't this is pretty tame, I think.
what we'll have to see.
In the Defamation Act of 2013: truth, honest opinion, and public interest. As for the truth defense, what I said he said wasn't in quotations, and the video doesn't include those exact words, so it wouldn't make sense to try that defense. As for the defense of honest opinion, first criteria, it has to be an opinion, and as a matter of basic grammar, what I said can only be an opinion. Because I didn't say Eddie Dempsey.
So he's suing for the content of the single tweet that he put on screen. Is that right? Did I get that right?
If that's true, then this seems like a completely ridiculous overreaction from Dempsey.
Oh, it's just
If
another.
that is the case.
It's just more bullshit slap lawsuits. Just suing people for saying things
Yeah.
that criticize you, right? It's literally, how does that make Eddie Dempsey any different to, J.K. Rowling or John Barilaro or anybody else in this specific regard?
Yeah, if that is the case, and again we'll have to wait and see, I suppose. But if he's just suing him for that, that's very poor form from Dempsey.
Exactly.
He said Tommy Robinson is right. I tweeted Eddie Dempsey saying Tommy Robinson was right, i.e. the video attached is Eddie Dempsey saying that. So any reasonable person seeing that tweet would read it as a summary of the attack.
Oh, but hang on a minute. When I was looking at this, we both agreed actually that we don't think that Eddie at any point in this video did say that they were right to hate Labour's focus on racial equality specifically.
Yeah, I guess, but I mean, for me, it's even though I think that the tweet is incorrect. I think is this worth suing somebody over?
Well, no,
I
obviously,
think not.
it just involves quote tweeting it and going, "This is bollocks. This is what I meant," right? I mean, and to be fair, I just think the defamation lawsuits in general, unless it's something incredibly heinous like outing you as a paedophile accidentally, right? Those are the only things that really, really do, or not deliberately.
Well, not accidentally. Yeah, I was about to say, if you are a paedophile, accidentally or not, that's fine because that's true. If you wrongly say that something is a pedophile,
and deliberate, you have to deliberately know that it's wrong, and then also say that, right?
Yeah,
Sure, fair enough. Defamation suit, that's fine. But people use these so fucking frivolously, and Eddie doing it over this it's just ridiculous. It's completely fucking ridiculous to sue over this shit.
Yeah.
Attached video. And with political speeches, of course a summary is going to be a subjective analysis, also known as an opinion. And the second criteria for the defense of honest opinion is you have to show the basis for your opinion. And I can't stress this enough. I attached the video of him saying the things that created my opinion. As for the defense of public interest, I have to believe that it's in the public's interest for me to say those things. And I don't think it's in the public's interest for working class movements to be aligning themselves with far-right agendas, as evidenced by the Katie Hopkins video that I put out 2 weeks prior. Look, in a straight fight, he loses this case every day of the week. But he has a big law firm, and I just have this. Again, I didn't want to have to do this, but his lawyers are threatening.
I mean, I said I didn't know his source of income. Well, clearly it's not a huge income if he can't afford the lawyers to back this up. So yeah, absolutely. Like, this is just intra-working class warfare here. What the fuck's going on? Like, what are you doing, Eddie? Like, what the fuck are you doing? This is nonsensical. And this is the guy, again, obviously, the salary that he gets from being RMT assistant gensec is decided on democratically, so who am I to comment, right? But he's clearly far wealthier than Femi is, and it's so poor form. And this guy's become like the front for like the Enough is Enough campaign when
it seems entirely unnecessary at best.
Yeah, it's really, really poor showing, right? Like, if you genuinely believe in this kind of this working class unity ticket that he seems to be trying to want to stand on, by doing this to another working class person over a fucking tweet.
Yeah.
Come on, mate.
Like at best, get your lawyer to send him a cease and desist letter.
Yeah. Please delete said
Fine.
tweet.
Yeah, that's okay, whatever. But like trying to drag someone through that's shit.
Yeah.
me with financial elimination. But if he, a white man who literally agreed with Tommy Robinson's supporters on an issue concerning ethnic minorities, wants to sue a black
Didn't agree with him though.
Yeah, you're not helping yourself, Femi. You're not helping, mate.
man for saying so and thinks that's a good look, fine. The most generous interpretation of these events is that he genuinely doesn't realize he's done anything wrong, because we all have blind spots, and so he just sees me as some centrist Ramona who's trying to throw dirt on a socialist movement. And so he's using his superior legal
I mean, he is a centrist Ramona,
Yeah.
but he's not really throwing dirt on the movement when he's in this video already said he wants people to, instead of donating to a legal fund, to donate to Enough is Enough. So, you know, like, credit where credit's due.
Okay, on that point then. But he is
a centrist and he is a Ramona. Yeah.
Correct.
resources to try and neutralize me. I can only hope that he sees this.
Because you can only assume that the vast majority of the shit that Femi gets that isn't just shit that he gets because he's black from racists, right? The vast majority of the hate that he gets is just things, people disagreeing with him about his desire to overturn Brexit. Think how much better his PR would be if he just let it go. Just let it go,
over
mate.
now. It's over.
It is over. I let it go, you know, in 2017, right?
Yeah, I've accepted it's just done. Maybe in 20 years the thing will change and maybe we think about rejoining. But for now, it's done. Let it be.
Yeah, exactly. Just let's focus actually on making sure that the person who's actually the opposition to Liz Truss's disaster Brexit actually has a plan to make it work properly, which Keith fucking doesn't. Keith is doing literally everything that Truss is doing.
No, but it's fine though, because God save the king. Awesome.
Fucking Labour. But yeah, literally, Keith's plan to save to turn around Brexit, quote unquote, is to keep staying out of the customs union, keep staying out of the single market, keep staying out of EFTA, and then also renegotiating the Northern Ireland Protocol to try and get extra agreements on agricultural products or stuff like that, which is literally to the letter identical to what Liz Truss wants to do.
That's just Conservative Party policy, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, brilliant. It's fucking. He's just monumentally pathetic. I have no idea. Like, and he's probably going to lose the next election as well. Now that they've got Liz Truss and the Queen's died, and she's got this position to rebuild her public image during the cost of living crisis. Because clearly, right, the Conservative Party win elections. They win elections through. They lose elections, because of scandals, right? They don't lose elections because Labour offer things good, because they've got too good the Tories and their media goons are too good at PR for that. They have to have something that cuts through the PR, and Liz Truss doesn't have that because she's not Boris Johnson, and Boris Johnson was where all the bad PR went, right? So in the same way that John Major lost because of Back to Basics and Stephen Milligan and all that shit, right? And Heath lost, or I guess was it Douglas Home would have lost actually at that point because of the barber boom and the oil crisis that happened at that point. That actual proper crisis had to happen where people's livelihood, where they were rolling blackouts and 3-day weeks. That was the only reason why they lost the election at that point to Harold Wilson. And if she doesn't have any scandals and she gets through the energy crisis and she gets the Queen's dead bounce, I don't see Keith winning. Do you?
The dead Queen bounce. Oh my god.
Well, yeah.
To be honest with you, I can't see her going for an early election at any point, so there's far too much time to tell.
Yeah, I mean, we shall see. Oh, the point I was going to make actually earlier as well was how we were talking about how, does that mean the Labour Party needs to cede to racist arguments? Well, they tried that. They tried that in 2015 with the fucking controls on immigration mugs and the massive fucking, stone tablet that Ed Miliband fawned in front of, right? They tried trying to appease these people and they did just as badly. Worse, in fact. They lost Scotland over that shit, right?
Yep.
Clearly, that doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't work. You're trying to appease people who will never vote for you.
Again, the only way you can get them to vote for you is by appealing to their natural material interests outside of all of these, culture war social issues that seem to take the vast majority of the cake nowadays.
Yeah.
100%. But yeah, so I mean, Eddie Dempsey is a shit. Femi is a shit lib, but is at least correct in this for broad parts of this video that we watched. I think
Yeah.
he mischaracterizes Eddie a lot. But I think the broader point that he's making, that Eddie suing him is ridiculous, and that people need to be more careful with the way in which they use their language in situations like these, where you could accidentally or deliberately, probably accidentally in this case, cede to the arguments of racists and give them credence by not being careful in the way in which you use your words and you frame your discussions.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts from you on that one?
My final thoughts are God save the king. Please don't arrest me.
Yeah.
Just
Fingers
just
crossed.
please don't do that.
And please don't sue me, Eddie, if you're watching this clip. I do not
Please
have any
do
money.
sue me. It would be amazing PR.
It really would be, right?
I would think of the clout you could get. It'd be amazing.
True.
I said that
Absolute
yesterday.
clout
When
goldmine.
I was talking about Prince Andrew. I was like, please sue me. You're a fucking
Yes.
nonce, mate. Sue me.
Streisand affect it.
It would be amazing publicity. My channel would blow up. And secondly, the discovery process in that court case would be fucking off the charts.
Oh my god, they'd have to pull up your stream vids of us talking about Prince Andrew's cock.
Yes.
It would be amazing.
Yeah.
But also, I'm just going to finish off this segment by saying everyone should go like and comment and subscribe and ring the bell to get the notifications when I do go live. And also follow me on my social medias, including my Twitch, where I've streamed. And if you're a future YouTube viewer, you should go and follow Kevin Logan, whose links I will put in the description on all good social media platforms, and give him your fucking money as well. And also, you should do that now if you're watching live.
Yeah.